A rough morning football world. A lot of injuries just in one game last night. Man, that was really brutal with Christian Kirk and Trevor Lawrence going down, and it capped off a week of rough injuries. But a lot of injuries means a lot of waiver wire possibilities as well. We welcome you. Good morning, everybody. We are into week 14, the last week of the regular season for most of you out there. And if you already made the playoffs, congratulations. If you need to win, we're going to help you out today. Adam Azer with Dave Richard and Jamie Eisenberg. Good morning, guys. Dave, tough one last night.
You know, first of all, I got some feedback from people that said, how could you have been so happy on Sunday night when there were so many injuries? And usually you're the guy that's angry on Sunday night. And I remember the conversation we had here in the office, Adam, where you pulled me aside and you were like, listen, dude, you can't be negative anymore. Fantasy's supposed to be fun. We have to have fun on the show. Yeah, you stopped me right at our omelet station here at the office. And you were like, you got to have a good time. You got to keep it upbeat, got to keep it fun. And then here you are sulking into Monday show, complaining about all the injuries. You're pulling a Dave. No one likes it, but I'm doing fine. And I'm sorry that you're not.
All right. No, I mean, look, it was just, it was exciting. You know, Christian Kirk goes down. I'm like, all right, well, you know what? Zay Jones and Parker Washington is sure. And then Trevor Lawrence gets hurt, but whatever. Good morning, Jamie.
Good morning.
Yeah, and if Lawrence doesn't, he has an ankle sprain. If he doesn't come back and finish out this season, or even if he comes back and he's gimpy, he's really going to be a pretty interesting guy next year again, right, Jamie? I mean, obviously we'll get to the waiver wire in just a second, but the way he was finishing this season was so exciting, and now he goes out like this, and it's going to be interesting to see the way people break down his 2023 year.
I'm curious to see what the receiving core is going to look like, because it would be surprising if they bring back Calvin Ridley, given the compensation they have to give the Falcons in return, plus paying him. So that's I think the kind of the sticking point. I guess Evan Ingram too. Oh no, they gave Ingram contract. So we'll see what happens with the receiving core there. But you know, this is what happened last year. He got hot at this point last season, and we thought, okay, this is going to be a breakout campaign for him, and then he struggled to start the season. My guess is he'll be treated as somewhere between QB 9 and 14, in that range. You know, you have Richardson coming back, who will be another interesting prospect in comparison. I think Stroud will be ranked ahead of him, you know, just looking at the division. So there's a lot of guys you can, you know, put in the mix there, and the rookies as well. But I think when Lawrence is on his game, as we've seen, he could be as special as any quarterback in the league, in reality and in fantasy. And even, you know, in last night's game, not the best of starts, but still 29 fantasy points based on what he's able to accomplish.
And I want to stress, he's not out for the season officially, anything like that. It's an ankle sprain. He hurt his knee and he came back and he played on a Thursday. So maybe we'll get lucky with that. Anyway, it's time to talk about the waiver wire. Jamie, we'll start with you. Top 3 waiver wire priorities in week 14.
Yeah, they're all running backs. I was all set for Tyjae Spears to be the number 1 player to add this week, and then Mike Vrabel, you know, thankfully said that Derrick Henry's not in the concussion protocol, so it sounds like he's going to be fine, and they have an extra day to make sure he's fine because the Titans play the Dolphins on Monday in week 14. It sounds gross, but Ezekiel Elliott is my number 1 guy to add. Just looking at the amount of touches that he had against the Chargers last week, plus the Thursday turnaround with Ramondre Stevenson out, most likely out. He's the number 1 guy to go get. I think Roschon Johnson should be the second guy to go get, just based on what he showed us in his last game, and you know, the potential for his outlook rest of season. Not the easiest of schedules, as we've talked about quite a bit, but could still be a flex option and maybe more. And then I still put Spears third, just with the potential of maybe him getting more work, maybe Derrick Henry not necessarily being healthy, but I think Spears is still worth adding because you saw what the upside could be. I mean, he looked electric with his touches, season high in touches, and 89 total yards, what he was able to accomplish on 4 catches. So I think he could be a difference maker for fantasy if he does get a chance to start at least one game.
So that's Ezekiel Elliott going up against Pittsburgh on Thursday. Roschon Johnson faces the Lions. We know they're a tough matchup. And we also, I would think Deontay Foreman has a decent chance of coming back this week. And Tyjae Spears, you know, for what Jamie just said, Dolphins on Monday, but Spears' outlook not as good as Derrick Henry. Thankfully, not in the concussion protocol. All set, looks like, to play on Monday against the Dolphins. 2 Monday Night Football games this week, by the way. Dave, who are your top 3 priorities?
Doubleheader on Monday night, 1 game with the Titans, 1 game with the Giants. You're welcome, America. My top three. Zeke is number one for the same reasons Jamie laid out there. I know he's on the injury report with a thigh. How many muscles are in the thigh, Adam?
It doesn't matter. No one misses time with a thigh injury. We proved that last week.
Thank you very much.
I thought there
Rashawn
was somebody
Johnson is
missing him
second
with a
for
thigh
me.
injury, though, wasn't there?
If they call it a quad, then I'll
Wasn't somebody out with a thigh injury? I thought.
probably. I mean, I'm honestly, have no idea, but like it's a dead leg. He's fine. I'm joking, but he'll play. He'll play.
You're guaranteeing it?
I mean, he was on the injury report last week. I see no reason why he wouldn't play.
Almost all the Patriots skill players were on the injury report this week with the designation that they have to give on Monday.
I think we should mention what's going on with Ramondre.
Right. It was about to ask that.
All the internet doctors think it's a high ankle sprain, which should probably end his season, which means Zeke is going to be not only great this week, well, theoretically anyway, but also he should get opportunities the rest of the year. Like Patriots, full tank mode, let Zeke free. He's someone that might be a decent starter if you're desperate at running back or as a bye week replacement this week, whatever. If you need a running back, Ezekiel's the one to get. And Roshan second.
The player who missed with a thigh injury, and it was originally as a quad injury, but they did list it, at least on our injury report, as a thigh, is Rashid Shaheed.
Okay, I'm going quad with him. Go ahead, Dave. Zeke,
Roshan too. And then I think it's really what you need. If you need a wide receiver, because there were a lot of wide receivers that were hurt in week 13, Elijah Moore is at the top of the list for me. I'm not really excited about that pick either, but you got to love the volume. You've got to love the chemistry that he has over multiple seasons with multiple teams with Joe Flacco. I think Flacco is still going to start for the Browns. And as long as that's the case, and especially if Amari Cooper's out, I think Elijah Moore is your third best waiver wire target, unless you need a tight end. And then I'd try and get Isaiah Likely back on your roster. Unless you need a running back with some upside for the rest of the year, in which case I'd go with Tyjae Spears or Antonio Gibson.
Yeah. Did anyone say Kenneth Gainwell's name?
He's after Spears for me in terms of the running back priorities. I would put Elijah Moore ahead of him as well. But you look at DeAndre Swift, we just don't know. We don't know what the status is there.
And right, exactly. So we have no idea. I haven't seen anything. I'm looking right now on Twitter, on X, to find anything on DeAndre Swift. I haven't seen anything. It didn't seem that serious. He left late in the game. People are actually criticizing him even being in, but I think that's silly. But Gainwell, week 1 for Kenneth Gainwell was, I think, 18 touches. And yeah, he's facing the Cowboys, but yeah, it was 14 carries and 4 catches at New England. You can't ignore that. That would obviously be a pretty big deal if DeAndre Swift were out Sunday night at Dallas. So, and then
he scored against the Cowboys in that game. He got the rushing touchdown over Swift. He also had 5 catches against the 49ers in their comeback effort. So he was playing a lot more than Swift at the end of the game. Yeah. It almost felt like Swift was giving him an opportunity to rest as opposed to vice versa.
He played more than Swift throughout the game. I don't know. He ended up with more snaps than Swift. I figure it was probably pretty even before Swift got hurt. Okay, so anyway, those are some of your top priorities. We'll talk about quarterbacks. Gardner Minshew could be at the top of the list. Of course, in the shallow leagues, you could have one of those Packers wide receivers if Christian Watson doesn't play. That was another one. I mean, Sunday night was a thrilling game. Monday night was a thrilling game, but they both came with some pretty bad injuries. So that was disappointing. It's going to be, I think, a tough week for a lot of people with the Commanders, by the way, and the Cardinals on a bye. So morning buzz is what you need to start your day. If you missed any of the sports action, the fake basketball tournament is alive and well yesterday and today. So if you want to know what's going on there, check out Morning Buzz on CBS Sports HQ. But not just that, all the college football buzz, college basketball buzz, of course, NFL. Your sports day starts here with highlights from all the top games and leagues. Catch up on storylines and social buzz. Jump in and jump out. Morning Buzz runs all morning starting at 9 a.m. and get it all for free on the CBS Sports app. When I am done with with editing this show and publishing it, I will throw on HQ. I'll watch a little Morning Buzz and I will, get caught up. So it's really a great resource. We talking FAB today? Should we talk FAB today? Is there a break the bank guy?
I guess if you need a running back, then there is for Zeke if he's available. If you are just trying to, get ahead of, your league and he's still available, Roshan Johnson. I don't know if he's a break the bank guy, but you could certainly spend a good portion of it if you want to. 2 QB leagues are going to be a lot of people searching for help. If you're down Kyler Murray and Sam Howell on a bye and you're looking for a Trevor Lawrence replacement, I mean, think about the fab that could be spent on, Joe Flacco, Jake Browning, Tommy DeVito, CJ Beathard. There's just a lot of junk out there, but they may be starters for you that you're looking for 12 plus PPR points, 12 plus points.
Yeah. Well, if Ramondre could miss the rest of the season or the rest of the fantasy season, Zeke's got the Steelers. And I'll talk about them in a second. But then the Chiefs have a pretty bad run defense. The Broncos have a terrible run defense. Buffalo has a bad run defense. He actually has good matchups. Plus, he might get every touch or just about. But the Steelers guys have been a really good run defense for a while, but they are really thin at linebacker. And they just keep losing their middle linebackers, basically. Landon Roberts being the third one. So I don't think he's going to play this week. So it looks like a bad matchup on paper, but you see James Conner just ran for 100 yards and 2 touchdowns against the Steelers. And Mike Tomlin even talked about how losing all these linebackers it's tough for them. These are the communicators, right? So, they're thin at a very important position when it comes to run defense. I know we all know who Zeke is. We all know what the Patriots offense is. Last night we were talking about this game having the lowest over-under, in like years.
But if you look at what Ramondre's been doing in this bad offense and what Zeke just did against the Chargers in this bad offense where they didn't score,
yeah,
he's going to get probably 3 to 5 catches. He's going to get probably 15 carries, so that's hard to overlook given what the circumstances are. Is he a must-start guy? No. Is he a flex at worst? Yes.
Yeah. And he's 62% rostered in CBS Sports Leagues. Okay. Well, I was just kind of saying that maybe making the case that you spend all your fab on Zeke, if you need it, if you need that running back.
That's going to be the theme of fab this week. If you're in a do or die spot and you need one of these players for your lineup, cha-ching.
Yeah. Oh man. I mean, I usually do fab, in the afternoon or at night. I did one for one league, and it's just almost everybody we're going to talk about is rostered. It's like, oh, just put in a claim for Jalen Hyatt. Great. Because I lost Christian Kirk, and oh boy, it's gonna be rough out there for a lot of people with all these injuries.
I'm sad for you.
I am sad. I think everybody knows how important Trevor Lawrence is to my fantasy season. So
he's going to be the start of the week too.
No, he did leave with the ankle injury. Their next 2 games are Cleveland and Baltimore. Cleveland's struggling a little bit.
Good luck, CJ Beathard.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, before I forget, we had Scott Fish on last night, and we raised $500 for Fantasy Cares, which was incredible. And he gave away a signed Jamar Chase jersey. And you can still go donate to Fantasy Cares now and help children get toys for the holidays, those who can't afford it. But he said that the buzz in Minnesota is that Nick Mullins has the best chance to be named the starter. So I want everybody to consider that when you think about Josh Dobbs and Nick Mullins and Jaden Reed or Jaron Hall, Jaden Reed. Nick Mullins might be the guy for the Vikings. We don't have.
Hopefully, find that out today. It would suck to go into your waiver period, and Kevin O'Connell says we're not in a rush to name our starting quarterback yet, and then you get to Wednesday and we have split snaps in practice, and so for fab leagues that run or for waivers that run Tuesday and Wednesday night, you don't get an answer. So you'll see it, Adam, the list I sent you that Nick Mullins is on the list of quarterbacks to add. More for 2 QB or super flex leagues. But listen, if you have a chance to get ahead of it, get ahead of it.
Okay, so I'll tell you a lot of things that you already know, but we'll go over it anyway. Derrick Henry, not in the concussion protocol. Tank Dell out for the season. Christian Kirk hurt his groin on his first snap yesterday, a 26-yard catch.
Hit the over on his receiving yard prop, though.
Ramondre Stevenson left in the first quarter. He's got the ankle injury. DeAndre Swift, we are waiting to see word on him. Brian Robinson left with a hamstring injury. They have a bye, and then they have the Rams coming out of the bye, who have been a pretty tough matchup. Christian Watson hurt his hamstring. Hopefully not too bad. They're at the Giants on Monday night. Amari Cooper left with the head injury. So the Jaguars, what a great matchup the Jaguars are right now for receivers. That would be Elijah Moore's matchup, or hopefully Amari Cooper's matchup.
Well, it would be both of their matchups if Cooper's healthy.
Yes, that is true. Demario Douglas did not practice, or listed as a did not practice, and they play Thursday. So he'd be pretty appealing on the waiver wire, but we don't know that he'll be back from his concussion. Marquise Brown left with a heel injury. He's on a bye. Don't know if Tommy DeVito will be the quarterback for the Giants. Tyrod Taylor is eligible to return. He could come back and
Don't do it, Giants.
They shouldn't.
I think DeVito would be the guy, but I don't know.
Yeah, he's helped them stay competitive, and they've got to get a look to see if he could be their backup QB of the future.
It was impressive, Adam, that you took over our social media accounts yesterday and trolling Heath.
I did not. I saw it. I didn't know about it until last night, but there was a tweet from the Fantasy Football Today social media account comparing.
NFL on CBS.
Oh, wow. NFL on CBS comparing Tommy DeVito to Patrick Mahomes, and basically just saying what we all knew. DeVito's better than Mahomes.
So I quoted X'd it, whatever you say now. And I said, it's always fun when Adam takes over our social media accounts and starts trolling Heath.
If I had taken over the social media accounts, it would have been all about Florida State getting robbed. I'm still mad about that for some reason. Darren Waller is also eligible to return. He's 51% rostered. He has great matchups rest of season, but we don't know when he'll be back. Kenny Pickett's going to be out this week and out for, you can drop him if you have him. He's going to be out likely for the rest of the fantasy season, maybe week 17, hopefully week 18 for Pickett. Derek Carr likely out this week. He's got 3 different injuries he's dealing with. And then it's like, how much are we going to trust the passing game against Carolina? Just shuts down every passing game except for Mike Evans. Zach Wilson, interesting situation there. If you believe the reporting, they wanted him to, Dave, sum it up. They wanted him to come back and he's like, I don't know.
He was reportedly reluctant to go back to being the starter there because he doesn't want to get killed. And unfortunately, that reluctance might cost him future opportunities after this season. But Robert Saleh swears that he does want to play. I would guess that he's the starter for the Jets. Not that that makes you feel good about the Jets or anybody on the Jets offense, because all 3 of their quarterbacks are atrocious.
It makes me feel a lot better about Garrett Wilson, though, because he gets so many.
We've seen it. Great. Yeah. So you'll get your 15 PPR and your 7 non-PPR points from Wilson.
I'll take that. That's fine. Tyler Higbee was evaluated for a concussion there at Baltimore. And the Steelers are pretty beat up. Jeffrey Simmons is a big deal for the Titans. Their best run stuffer. He's out multiple weeks, so that's good news.
Now the Dolphins offense will do really well against them.
Mostert and Achane. Good news for them on Monday night. And the Eagles signed Shaq Leonard. Is that a good IDP play or just kind of a name that
it can't be any worse than what they have right now? My gosh, that's a terrible defense.
It's probably going to be the first name out of my mouth when we talk about linebackers later on.
Okay. I think that's about it. AJ Terrell's in the concussion protocol. They play Tampa Bay. It's a good quarterback. Yeah, good quarterback for the Falcons. And Kansas City actually got pretty beat up. Safety Brian Cook is going to miss some time with an ankle injury, and linebacker Drew Tranquil left with a concussion. So I think they're going to lose. Defense. I think they're going to lose to Buffalo. I think Buffalo's winning that game.
Wow.
In Arrow.
I would be surprised.
Before we go to break, is Patrick Mahomes the biggest bust in fantasy?
No way.
Non-injury bust.
I mean, I guess by definition of I called him a bust to start the season because of his ADP to take a quarterback there. So maybe he is.
QB 8 per game. That's pretty bad for where he was going.
Yeah, it might be.
What a shame. All right, you still have time to redeem yourself. It's been a little unlucky recently. We'll be right back with our top 3 players at each position. Let's go back to the Garden at quarterback this week. We'll be right back on Fantasy Football Today.
A Game of Honor. The Army-Navy game presented by USAA. Saturday on CBS and streaming on Paramount+.
Top 3 quarterbacks on the waiver wire. And listen, we'll go through guys like Geno Smith and Baker Mayfield, the ones who are rostered in more than 70% of leagues. That'll be in our shallow league segment in a little bit. But if they're not available, Jamie, who are we looking at? And maybe even if they are available, who are the top 3 quarterbacks?
Including those guys?
Yeah, sure. Well, but give me the top 3 and then compare them to those guys.
The top 3 would be Minshew, Jameis Winston, and then take your pick between Joe Flacco or Jake Browning. I like Flacco better for this week, but we know he's not a guaranteed starter if the Browns do go back to Dorian Thompson-Robinson, which in my opinion would be a mistake. But if they do, I take him over the Jaguars, even though Browning looked awesome against Jacksonville. That's part of the reason why. But I think when you look at the other guys, factoring them in, it's more long-term versus short-term. If I need somebody for this week, I like Minshew better than Geno Smith and Matthew Stafford. If I need somebody for the rest of the season, Stafford has a great game coming up in 2 weeks, I believe it is, or next week. Not week 14 for sure. Week 15 or week 16, I forget when he's
Week
playing.
15.
Which one?
Week 15 against the
Against
Commanders.
Washington. And then Geno Smith in week 16 against the
Titans.
Eagles. I'm sorry. Week 15 against the Eagles, week 16 against the Titans. So back-to-back good games for him. But again, for week 14, both those guys, do not start them, please.
Yeah, so Geno's got the 49ers on the road, and Stafford is at Baltimore. So, right, if you want to stash them, this is not an important week for you, then you can, and it's the case for some people, you got a first-round bye, whatever it is, then you can look at Geno Smith and Gardner, and Matthew Stafford, who
Well,
have
they wouldn't
great.
be first-round buys. They would be first-round playoff matchups.
You're right. You're absolutely right. You have a first-round bye. Well, even if you have a first-round bye, Stafford in that'd be week 16. He gets the Saints. They've actually been pretty vulnerable lately. I can't say that's a great matchup though. And Smith gets who? The Eagles, was it?
Well, he does get the Titans in the first
Titans.
playoff matchup off a bye, if that's what you're looking at. And so you can sort of play with that one for sure, because if you don't need him in week 15 and he plays great, which he could against the Eagles, then you'll say, okay, this will be the guy I start. But look, we're in quarterback hell right now. So when you lose a guy like Trevor Lawrence with all the other guys who have been down, to have somebody like Geno Smith or Matthew Stafford coming off the games that they just had, Stafford 2 straight games, you'll be happy about that, as opposed to, let's say, I'm going to trust Jake Browning or Joe Flacco.
Yeah. So to recap, Gardner Minshew, if you can't get those guys, Gardner Minshew, Jameis Winston, and Joe Flacco. We wish Winston had a better matchup. Do you think he'll crack 20 fantasy points, which is pretty rare against the Carolina Panthers?
No.
I would take the under, but it's Jameis, so you never know. I think the one thing that will hold him back is Taysom Hill, and they'll probably be able to run like crazy against Carolina. So that's the drawback of them allowing Jameis to have success. The games where you like Jameis for is they're down 3 touchdowns early, and here comes Jameis winging it all over the place. So that's where Jameis is usually has best.
That might not be until week 17 when they play the Bucks.
All right, let's get to some running back starts here, Dave. All right, so we had you can repeat yourself. The top 3 running backs for week 14.
Zeke, Roshan, Tyjae Spears.
Zeke, Roshan, Tyjae Spears. And if you found out Swift were out, let's say we find out tonight DeAndre Swift is not going to play this week. Zeke or Gainwell?
Zeke.
Jamie, Zeke or Gainwell?
We were just finding out for this week that Swift is
Yeah.
out?
Yeah, who would you rather have? If Swift were out and Ramondre were out, would you rather have Gainwell at the Cowboys or Zeke at the Steelers?
Zeke at the Steelers.
Okay, but Gainwell would be number 2 in that scenario?
For sure.
Yeah.
I think that's probably where I'd put him.
Because the thing that we don't know is, in this made up scenario of yours, how long is Swift out?
Well, but not only that, Roshan Johnson is a big unknown, right? I mean, how safe do you feel adding him and then you're not starting him, are you?
The thing that is frustrating for what we all do, especially me, I write the waiver wire column, is like we've been saying this now for basically the better part of a month for Roshan, just as a stash candidate, just to see. I mean, really all season, but certainly for the last 2 weeks after the Minnesota game, like you should be adding this guy just to see what happens. We don't know when Deontay Foreman's coming back. We don't know, like we debated the schedule. I know Dave was a little bit more, promising or more optimistic about the schedule, even though it's Detroit and Cleveland. But that just tells you where he comes out on Roshan in the potential, mostly in the passing game. So there's a lot to like about what he could become. But yeah, there's certainly pitfalls. I mean, he did that game he played in that game without Foreman. It's still a Bears offense that's been very up and down, even when Justin Fields has been playing great, certainly in the backfield. They could come off this game and they felt, okay, Roshan was better for us against the Vikings. Khalil Herbert's better for us against the Lions. That's just how they could approach it. Foreman could be better for us against the Lions. So it's just an unknown. So yes, you take the potential of starter in Gainwell, if that's the case, or certainly starter in Zeke, if that's the case. So, but this is why, we say, do we need to have a FAB conversation? Now you're chasing Tyjae Spears. Now you're chasing Roshan Johnson when you could have had these guys for nothing.
Yeah, totally.
The other point on Roshan is that he played on a lot of third downs in their last game. I want to say that he's played on a lot of third downs for most of his recent games. Let's call it like the last month. If you want me to double check, I will.
You double check. We just got news. Schefter just tweeted, Ramondre Stevenson suffered a high ankle sprain and is now expected to miss, in the words of a source, quote, a few weeks.
Yeah.
So it's Zeke number 1 by far. There's no question.
Yeah. Oh, man. What a brutal week.
And you could drop Stevenson.
What a brutal week this was. Okay. So is there another running back in the Patriots backfield for the deeper leagues?
Ty Montgomery.
Yeah.
But in some leagues, you have to start him as a wide receiver.
Oh. Speaking
I
of wide
wonder if
receivers,
there's someone that they would go get off someone's practice squad or somebody. Is it Kevin Harris? Not Kevin Harris.
I'll check that next.
Who was still there?
JJ Taylor? Is he still there?
Could be JJ Taylor.
well, we're not going to be getting excited about these names.
Dillon? Roshan Johnson.
I'm going to put in a claim for Curtis Martin just in case. So wide receivers, Jamie, who are the top 3 wide receivers to get this week?
Elijah Moore is 1. Dave alluded to this. Got 35 targets in his last 4 games, 12 targets last week. Maybe Amari Cooper's out. Great matchup against Jacksonville. Just everything sort of falling in line for Elijah Moore. So hopefully that's something that could be a positive. I'm going to go back to Odell Beckham second. You talked about this, Adam, that he had the shoulder injury in their last game against the Chargers. So that might have led to some down production, but should be healthy coming off a bye. Still no Mark Andrews. Not a favorable matchup to start against the Rams, but it is a revenge game for him if he wants to approach it like that. So there could be a situation where I think Beckham could be a number 3 receiver moving forward. And then the third guy, I've kind of gone back and forth between, do you want to stash Curtis Samuel or do you want to take a chance on Demario Douglas just to see if he's able to play this week? I'll put Douglas third just with the hope that he clears the concussion protocol in time to play. But even if he just comes back for the fantasy playoffs, as much of a dumpster fire as the Patriots are, he still had back-to-back games with 9 targets and 6 catches. So in PPR, he might be a serviceable number 3 receiver.
Okay, so Elijah Moore. And it is important to point out that Elijah Moore did not just have a good game last week. And I would also argue what a good game means, because I'm guessing his yards.
Volume. He got a lot of volume.
Yeah, he's not doing a lot with these targets. No. But 4 catches for 83 yards on 12 targets is good for your fantasy team. He has scored 12 or more PPR fantasy points in 3 of his last 4 games. Jamie mentioned the targets, but it's 7 or more in 4 straight games. So it hasn't just been dependent on Amari Cooper's absence, but obviously,
or on Joe Flacco.
Yeah, true. And Flacco threw over 40 times yesterday or Sunday.
44 wasn't the number?
Yeah, I think so. You wouldn't expect that from a Cleveland quarterback, but their defense is not playing great right now. Denzel Ward's been out, and their offense stinks, so they're giving up more points. Anyway, it's a great matchup against Jacksonville, but I did want to point that out. It's 3 of the last 4 games for more 12 or more PPR fantasy points. Not exactly Slade a few weeks ago. He had a 42% target per route run rate, something like that, which won't repeat itself. But when he was on the field, he got targeted. Tight ends, Dave, we haven't talked about this yet. And there's some interesting ones. There's some players with really good matchups this week. So who do you like at tight end?
I've got Likely at the top of the list, followed closely by Gerald Everett, followed closely by Brevin Jordan. Those are going to be my top 3 at tight end for this week if you're streaming.
Okay. So Likely has the Rams, Everett the Broncos, Jordan the Jets, right? And you did not mention Tyler Conklin, who I know Jamie likes, who's also in that Brevin Jordan game. Jamie, you like Conklin quite a bit, right?
Yeah, great matchup. And he's going to get targets no matter who the quarterback is. So that's the nice thing about him. He's gotten you for the most part a safe floor. And, I think similar to Gerald Everett, both guys, great matchups, great opportunities. So I lean slightly toward Conklin over Everett, but they're very close. And Jordan is just really more a byproduct of will Dalton Schultz be out. That's something you just have to keep an eye on.
Right.
That's fair.
Yeah, right. So do you have a strong preference? I have Trey McBride in a league, must-win league. I'm 7th place right now, so I have a chance. And I put in 2 claims. I did put Everett ahead of Conklin. I got to figure he has a much better chance to score a touchdown, and they both have really good matchups. But that I could see flipping. But I'll probably keep it that way. I don't think Likely is available there. But do you guys have a strong preference between the 4 that we mentioned? Likely, Everett, Brevin Jordan, Tyler Conklin, or maybe we just don't make this our number 1 priority and we'll get one of these guys?
For me, it's Likely. He's the one that I like the best of the bunch because I think he's got staying power as a regular part of the Ravens passing game for the rest of the year.
Agreed. If you're just looking for the 1 week option, I think non and half PPR Everett makes more sense. Full PPR, I'll take Conklin.
Dave, you said you had some info on the.
Sure. Just following up on what we were talking about with the running backs and Roschon Johnson, the last 3 games, he's played a huge majority of third down snaps for the Bears, including in their last game, all of 18 third down snaps he played. So I think he's got that role locked up, and the Bears might turn to him after the bye and say, you know what, you're our best runner. Let's go ahead and let you loose. So Roschon is locked in for me as the number 2 running back to get off waivers, unless I want to take a chance on Gainwell, which I would do if I had DeAndre Swift, and I didn't already have Gainwell because I'm a knucklehead for not backing up DeAndre Swift with Kenneth Gainwell. And then the other one is who's the next running back up if Ezekiel Elliott were to go down. Shame on us for not knowing that J.J. Taylor is on the Texans right now, so we can't use him unless he somehow finagles his way back to New England. It's Ty Montgomery. It's Jermichael Hasty, who's been inactive since being acquired by the Patriots from the Jaguars, and Kevin Harris is on their practice squad. So really nobody.
Who's going to score more points rest of season? Ezekiel Elliott or Tony Pollard?
You're evil.
Rest of season?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm going to say Pollard.
Yeah. Let me just go through Pollard's schedule because I feel like it's hard.
I've got it right here. It's not easy this week.
Not that. That's actually not good. Philadelphia, Buffalo, Miami, Detroit. Zeke has definitely a better schedule.
Buffalo, Miami, he'll be okay.
So, yeah, I mean, I'll take Pollard, but it would not surprise me. Barf.
It also wouldn't be shocking if the Patriots decided to give one of their or bring somebody off somebody else's practice squad and just give them an audition.
Sure.
Okay, DSTs, Jamie. Who are we looking at?
Well, go get the Steelers if they're available. Let me scroll down to it. The Colts, Dave talked about this last week. They're a good one. The Saints, they get the Panthers. The Saints' schedule to close the season is great. So if you're looking long term, I like the Saints and the Colts. They're basically they're roster in the same amount of leagues. Although Jake Browning might carve up this Colts defense based on how he looked last night. But the Saints, the Colts, the Texans, they get the Jets. The Patriots, they get the Steelers with Mitch Trubisky. And give the Patriots defense credit. I mean, the offense has been absolutely atrocious, but their defense has hung tough. So that's a credit to Bill Belichick and that side of the ball. And then the Packers taking on Tommy DeVito. Packers defenses look better of late. So if you're looking for a 5th option there. Kickers, it feels like it's the same list every week. I don't know why Blake Grupe. I know he had a bad game last week, but he just continues to be a productive fantasy kicker. Home against the Panthers, indoors. Matt Gay against the Bengals, and Jake Moody still against the Seahawks.
Matt Gay is the man. This guy, he's a good kicker to add for sure.
Number 1 kicker this week.
Something I'd like to address. Oh, Dave, why don't you do IDP and then I'll address something.
What's that, Adam?
IDP?
No, I thought there was a way that you were going.
You down with IDP?
Yes, perhaps you know who I am. I'm going to start with defensive backs. PJ Locke has been really good in place of Kareem Jackson for Denver. Not a rest of season alternative, but he's up there. If you need a defensive back, Charvarius Ward has been getting it done with passes defense the last few weeks. I would keep it rolling with him. Nate Hobbs for the Raiders. Brian Branch, especially if you're in a long-term league, go grab him. He's starting to play better and put up better numbers now. It's ugly otherwise at defensive lineman. Kobe Turner with the Rams is someone that you can go and get. Justin Matabuke is someone I had to drop in one of my leagues. I'm going to go back and get him. They're optimistic that he'll play. Another defensive lineman, Jonathan Hankins. I told you I'd mention Shaquille Leonard at linebacker. He's absolutely on the list, available in over 70% of CBS Sports IDP leagues. He would be my top grab from the IDP group because everyone else on this list has a wart. Michael Walker, not sure if he's going to be the main linebacker for the Steelers. Devondre Campbell should be the main linebacker, or main middle linebacker, I should say, for the Packers, but he had a down game last week. Mike McFadden with the Giants, we'll see if he still keeps his role. And Samson Ekubam might be more of an edge rusher, but his last 2 games with the Colts, he's put up some pretty good numbers.
I had a wart once when I was a kid. They had to freeze it off. It was really was actually one of the most painful. You ever have that happen? You had to freeze things off. It was the most painful.
No, I'm
Dave
not
said
aware.
all these players had warts. I had a wart on my elbow. It was awful. Awful.
How do you get a wart?
I don't know. Kids get everything.
Well, I mean, you don't shower at them, so that probably explains it.
I did
Never
back then.
heard
I
of it.
did.
I only thought that like cafeteria lunch ladies get warts.
Yeah, I still have like a scar from it.
No offense to the cafeteria lunch ladies that might be watching or listening right now.
Everybody's been talking about how sick I sound. Some person said listening to Adam makes me want to blow my nose. I get it. I'm sorry. I'm so frustrated. I can't even. Someone in my house has been sick every single day for, I would say, 2.5 months. We just have not had one moment where someone hasn't been sick. It's been crazy.
Does that include the cat?
No, she's doing fine.
What about the cockroaches?
Don't have those anymore. We just have every other animal, like
Those hideous spiders, right?
spider cricket. Well, spiders, but the
Oh my
spider
gosh,
crickets.
they look so disgusting.
They're terrifying. Yeah.
Yeah, that's where you got the wart from.
The spider cricket? No, I've
Yeah,
never
all the way
seen a
back when you
spider
were a
cricket.
kid. Now they're following you around. They're trying to wart you up again.
Never saw a spider cricket until last month when I moved in, or 2 months ago, whenever it was when I moved here.
You should burn down your house.
I think we'll take another break, and when we come back, I don't think I'm going to do that, Dave. Shallow leagues, deep leagues, and we'll talk about last night's game, which was really fascinating. And we'll be right back on Fantasy Football Today.
A Game of Honor. The Army-Navy game presented by USAA. Saturday on CBS and streaming on Paramount Plus.
So most of the players we give you are available in at least 35% of CBS sports leagues, but the players who are rostered in more than that, we don't talk about all that often. We haven't spoken about Dameon Pierce, for example. But Jamie, tell us who the shallow league options are.
Quarterback would be Matthew Stafford, Geno Smith. I still put Josh Dobbs on this list just with the hope that he's still the starter, because what he showed us in the first couple of starts for the Vikings, plus the opportunity to get Justin Jefferson back. So you might want to just take a flyer on him again, unless we know that he's going to be benched. And intrepid reporter Scott Fish is right that Nick Mullins is the starter for the Vikings moving forward. At running back, it's a little bit more interesting. Dave mentioned Antonio Gibson. He's still in this range for us because he's a 66% roster. So wherever he is, he's worth adding, because we don't know if Robinson's going to be healthy coming off of their bye. Dameon Pierce as well. It's not pretty. He still played fewer snaps than Devin Singletary, but out-touched him 15-9. And you know that he could still be the primary running downs guy. So keep an eye on Dameon Pierce. At wide receiver, it's much more interesting with some of the guys that are available there. The two Packers guys, not named Christian Watson, would be very interesting if Watson does not play, because Jordan Love is on fire right now. So you have Romeo Doubs. He's got 11 or more PPR points in 4 of his last 5. You have Jaden Reed with 15 or more PPR points in 3 of his last 4. So they're playing well, at least producing well. So you can add those guys. And then Noah Brown, we don't know if he will immensely benefit with Tank Dell out, but there's an opportunity now. And so, what we saw in those 2 games when Nico Collins was out, he was fantastic. Only had 2 targets, no catches last week against the Broncos, but again, big opportunity calling. And then Smith and Jigba, he's got 3 games this season with at least 7 targets. In all 3 of those games, he scored 12 or more PPR points. So hopefully he starts to get more work moving forward, as Geno might be having to throw the ball a little bit more, as we saw in that game against Dallas, and Geno looked fantastic. So Smith and Jigba still worth stashing there. And then a tight end, we mentioned this last week, still same thing again, Dallas Goedert, hopefully comes back. You'd like to have him on your team just in case, just to see what happens there. He's the only one at that position.
You think Goddard is number 1 or number 2 up there with Zeke, if available this week?
No, because I think that what Goddard showed us earlier this season, you might be able to get streaming the position. It's not like he was consistently great.
Yeah, I'm just curious actually where he ranks. I have absolutely no idea per game. I'm going to guess somewhere around 10th. 11th. No, 10th. How about that? No, 11th. Yeah, 11th, tied with Darren Waller. Those 2 guys have been low-end starters at the position, averaging 10 points per game, which is pretty good for a tight end PPR. But Yeah, I'm fascinated to see what happens there with Goddard coming back.
I mean, the one nice thing about Goddard is that he's got some huge upside. We've seen it in a couple of games this year where he's had 25 PPR points, 18 PPR points, and even his floor games are, I'm looking at it right now, 7.6, 8, 8.2, 9.1. So to Jamie's point, it's not that far off from what you can get with a streamer, but I don't know how many streamers have the upside to get you 15 plus. Not that he can do it against, well, he might be able to do it against the Cowboys, but I would add him. I would, if you need a tight end, I might add him now. See if he plays. If he plays, great, you're going to start him. If not, you finagle your roster to get another one of the tight end streamers. I don't think you'll be that upset if you've got to pick one of the guys that we've mentioned at tight end to start, and you don't get Likely, but you get Gerald Everett or you get Tyler Conklin, one of those guys.
And I wasn't suggesting not adding Goddard. Adam just asked, is he the second?
Is he the second
player
best?
to add?
Right.
And I would say no.
Who is?
He
Who
might
would
be.
be?
It really depends on what you need. In a vacuum, it's hard to say if he's even fourth.
So if you're going through your waivers and you have the opportunity to pick whatever players you want, I would say you're getting Zeke first, then you're getting Tyreek Hill second. But no, if you're getting the players you want, if the players are available, it would be Elliott first, and then I think you go still with the running backs of Roshan or even maybe Spears, just with the upside of what those guys can be, and then you could still circle back and try and get Goddard, or like I said, Likely this week might produce at the same level. Conklin or Everett might produce this week at the same level. It's just not. I don't think it's Goddard's a slam dunk must start over those guys by that much of a difference, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think Noah Brown too. Just the 2 games he had without Nico Collins, right? Maybe 1 game was without Nico Collins. I think he's going to play on the outside more now with Tank Dell out. But there's just so many air yards and big game potential. It was very disappointing for Brown last week or Sunday. But Stroud didn't have a good game. I talked about this on the box score. I had this hunch that I saw him miss some throws, and turned out he had one of the highest, I think his second highest off-target rate, including an off-target throw to a wide-open Noah Brown down the field. But there could be some big games coming for Noah Brown. And I'm also pretty curious if Geno Smith is gonna just go off like after this slump against the Niners. But then after that, I mean, God, he looks so good against the Cowboys. So I hope he can carry that over. It's good in shallow leagues. There are some really good options. That's always the case, right?
Yes.
Deep leagues, Dave.
Before I get into this, can I bring up a quick strategy point as it pertains to waivers and ad drops for this week?
Yeah.
Let's say I'm fighting for my life in my fantasy league, and I'm playing against somebody else who is also fighting for their lives. It's essentially a play-in game in week 14, and he just lost Ramondre Stevenson, or he's got a Commanders or a Cardinals back on bye, and I don't necessarily need anything for my lineup. The exact right opportunity to try and play keep away from your opponent. I wouldn't break the bank on FAB to go and get Ezekiel Elliott in this instance, but if you've got a waiver claim that's ahead of your opponent, play defense. Grab Zeke so that your opponent can't use Zeke against you. Or if it's a quarterback, it's a 2 QB league, grab Flacco so that your opponent can't use him against you. It's only in this specific situation, though. You've got to take care of your team first. But if you think your lineup is good to go and you're ready for week 14 and you don't need to get anybody who's a must add, take a look at your opponent's lineup, see if they've got a hole, and then try and beat them to fill that hole and keep somebody away from their team so that they can't hurt you this week. So
yeah, but in the case of Elliott, though, like that's the type of player you want to get no matter what, because not only are you keeping him away from somebody else, you're potentially using him. I think it's more in what you're talking about. You're looking at there's one decent quarterback left. Go get that quarterback to keep your opponent from having. There's one decent tight end left. Like these are guys you're going to potentially play. Like you could use Elliott.
Right. And if there's a person in your league that you just don't like and is a total jerk, take a look at that person's roster and block that person.
Play defense against the jerk.
Yeah, you could do that.
You might want to do that. Let's say the jerk is someone who you're trying to beat on a tiebreaker.
Yeah, either whatever.
Same strategy.
All right, deep leagues, Dave. Who do we got? Let's focus on 20% rostered and less.
Sure. By the way, just Jamie saying you have to get Zeke no matter what. I'm getting flashbacks to 2019. It's amazing over here. Okay. Flacco, 90% available. He would be at the top of my list. Jameis would be after him, but it depends on what you can stomach between those two guys, DeVito, Bethard, Mullins. And obviously, if we get the word that Mullins is going to be the starting quarterback for Minnesota before your waivers run, go ahead and put Mullins probably at the top of the list. Running backs that are available in deep leagues. It's not pretty. Latavius Murray is at the top of the list at 79%. After that, it's Justice Hills, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. You're asking me to focus only on deep leagues, right? We're not talking about guys that are available in like 50% of leagues, Adam?
Right. Yes, of
All right.
course.
That's the list of running backs. Sorry to
Rest
make you
yourself.
ill. All right. How about this wide receiver? Khalil Shakir, available in 80% of leagues. Looks to me like he's the number 3 receiver in Buffalo's offense, and the Bills are about to play in a high-scoring game against Kansas City. Wouldn't mind having him on my team if I miss out on Elijah Moore, Odell Beckham. If Demario Douglas doesn't play, Shakir would be a good guy that you can pivot to. And another receiver, he just had a good game. I don't know if you can count on continuing to have a good game, but Jonathan Mingo in Carolina just had a lot of targets, decent catches, decent yardage to go along with it. And then Adams guy, Jalen Hyatt, 89% available. I would take the chance on him ahead of any of the Patriots receivers, Devontae Parker or Juju Smith-Schuster. And then at tight end, there's only 2. Brevin Jordan, we already talked about him. Chig Okonkwo at 80%. That would be the other tight end that I would go after.
I got 2 other receivers for you that could be relevant. It's Dontavian Wicks in Green Bay with the potential injury to Christian Watson, and Cedric Tillman in Cleveland if there is no Amari Cooper. He just got 6 targets from Joe Flacco, 11 targets his last 2 games. And Jacksonville, as we just saw, and we know, they're terrible against almost everything in the passing game. So Tillman might have an opportunity for a big game this week.
What about Zay Jones? I think he's 23% rostered.
It's hard to trust him, but yeah, he's there. But you're talking about backup quarterback. If it was still Lawrence, I'd feel a lot more comfortable with it.
Yeah.
We should probably mention Parker Washington.
Yeah. The slot guy who
Did I miss the part where we talked about Parker Washington?
No, we haven't talked. I was about to bring him up. And
available in a ton of leagues. Most definitely the slot replacement for Jacksonville. He played 80% of his snaps in the slot. And he moves okay. Like, he's not exactly a world beater out there, but he's going to get some work, especially from a quarterback like Beathard, who's not going to throw every pass Flacco style 30 yards downfield.
But don't chase the touchdown, because the touchdown.
Oh, no. Chase the targets.
That was so
lucky. He might get you 8 PPR points.
Yeah. Parker, by the way, Devontae Parker, I don't want to completely gloss over him. He had 9 targets last week. So it's just all about if Demario Douglas is out. But no Kendrick Bourne, obviously. No Demario Douglas. That's actually been a pretty decent scenario for Devontae Parker in terms of drawing targets. So, I mean, honestly, in a 12-team, 3-receiver league, I don't remember. I know I have Christian Kirk in that league, and I think I started Jalen Guyton last week. So I feel like I might have to look to one of these guys. It's not that unrealistic for people. That's only a 12-team league. But, yeah. Sure. Yeah.
I'm worried that game's going to be just a ton of running. Both teams, Steelers, Patriots, just handing off, and whoever kicks the most field goals wins.
It's going to be ugly.
Yeah.
Cincinnati 34, Jacksonville 31. This was not ugly. And man, who are the Bengals? The team that we were all so worried about 2 weeks ago when they really struggled against Pittsburgh, or this team that's actually, oh my gosh, we're not even considering sitting Jamar Chase. Joe Mixon's good again. Jake Browning is not. Who are they, Jamie? The Cincinnati Bengals.
I mean, I hope they are what we saw last night. I mean, all the key contributors for the most part, aside from Higgins, was what we wanted to see. So really, just Mixon and Chase. But look, they were definitely putting the ball in Chase's hands as much as they could, and that was fun to see. And then they hit the big play over the top. So you got to feel great if you're the Jamar Chase fantasy manager that he's not going to be a total disaster, and you have to hit the panic button. He's not going to do this consistently down the stretch because the matchups are a lot tougher. But still, if he's going to get double digits in targets, you take your chances with that guy over most, even with the quarterback situation being what it is. Mixon, I think you got to feel good about it as well. Involved in the passing game, got the goal line opportunities because the offense moved the ball. He was able to fall into the end zone a couple times. So it's a fairly good situation to be with those 2 guys moving forward, certainly compared to what we saw last week against Pittsburgh.
One negative for Mixon, though, was that they did say they wanted to get Chase Brown more involved, and they absolutely did. So Mixon had 19.
I thought he looked pretty good, too.
It's really good.
Yeah.
9 carries for 61 yards. Mixon had 19 carries for 68 yards with 2 touchdowns. Are we dropping T. Higgins?
He's droppable, but I would reluctantly do it.
10-team leagues, yes. It's kind of like what we talked about Sunday with like McLaurin. There's just these guys that You know somebody will pick them up. You know there's a chance for a good game or two down the stretch, but you're not going to feel comfortable starting them. So if you need to drop somebody for Zeke in a 10-team league, if you're desperate, like I would start Elijah Moore over T. Higgins this week. So if you're in that situation, like you just need a little bit more of a higher ceiling play, then yes, you're dropping T. Higgins for something like that. If you need to pick up a tight end or quarterback because you lost somebody, then yes, you're dropping T. Higgins if that's the worst guy on your bench. But ideally, I would like to hold him if I can.
If I have Travis Etienne, and they're facing the Cleveland Browns and the Baltimore Ravens in their next two games. If I have Etienne, Calvin Ridley, and Evan Ingram, am I looking on the waiver wire for replacements? Not just to be clear, not dropping them, but just trying to avoid
to have a guy to go to in case things are bad. Yes, with Ingram, maybe with Ridley, probably not with Etienne.
I mean, you're talking about Washington being a go-to option for CJ Beathard. I would guess Ingram is that guy by far over Washington. So, and we saw it last night too at the end of the game.
It did.
So I mean, if you're saying who's the safety valve, I'm not getting rid of Evan Ingram by far. I think he may actually, I don't want to say benefit from this, but he may have a little bit more of a boost, mostly because Kirk is not there, not necessarily because of the quarterback change.
And just to be fair, he's had a ton of games this year with double-digit PPR points. I mean,
I'm just asking if you really are still confident starting them. I'm certainly not saying.
And so the
point Ridley's the only one that the answer is no. ETN,
right.
Yes, because of I think they'll lean on him. They'll lean on him in the passing game. And Ingram, I think you just kind of know what you're getting, and I don't think that's going to change. Again, I think he might get a little bit better from a target perspective because Kirk's not there. So Ridley is extremely tough to trust.
Ingram has 9 games this year with at least 9.5 PPR points. Shout out to the decimal nerds.
I know some people lost their matchup on Ridley's, whatever it was, 45-ish yard catch being called back. It was a really good catch. Tough game for him. They tried to get him involved. He was defended pretty well, I guess.
He was.
Came up a yard short of a touchdown, too. So
yep.
I would say go right back to him if Trevor Lawrence were the quarterback, but I can't say that. All right. And then let's go to the drop-o-meter. 0 to 10. I only have a few guys on the list. We'll talk about more drops when we get to each position in a moment. Jeff Wilson, 0 to 10.
15.
9.
Marquise Brown first. Marquise Brown, injured going into a bye.
Injured going into a bye, and then he plays the Niners, the Bears, and then Philadelphia in week 17. So you might not really like starting him until week 17. I'd put him at a 6.
Fair. I would say 5.
That's Marquise Brown. And yes, if you're wondering, well, what about that Bears matchup? Actually, not a good matchup for wide receivers this year.
This Bears defense has gotten better since adding Montez Sweat. They deserve credit.
Drake London, 0 to 10.
0.
Tampa Bay coming up.
0. Yeah, you can't drop him going into the matchup against Tampa Bay. I'll give him a 3 on the dropometer.
How about Pat Freiermuth facing the Patriots on Thursday?
That one's going to be higher. 6.
2.
Would you drop Pat Freiermuth for any of the waiver wire guys? Likely, Conklin, Everett, etc.?
I likely would.
Only likely.
Okay. All right, back to the waiver wire. And again, I'll give you more names to drop from Jamie's list. The shallow league guys are Stafford, Baker. We haven't really talked about Mayfield much. Kind of glossed over him. But Mayfield's got Atlanta this week.
That's without AJ Terrell.
Yeah, that's terrific. So if I said Mayfield, Geno Smith, Dobbs, and Stafford, Dave, how would you prioritize those 4?
Give me the names one more time, please.
No. Mayfield, Geno Smith, Stafford, and Dobbs.
I don't know if Dobbs is going to be the starter, so I can't put him first. I would put Mayfield first. I might take the chance on Dobbs second. And then if I needed a guy for this week, I think I'd take Geno over Stafford, but it's just for this week.
Okay.
It would be a different order if I already had a quarterback that I was okay starting this week and I needed somebody for the weeks after. And we already talked about that 20 minutes ago.
Right.
With Geno and Stafford.
Okay. The available players are Gardner Minshew, Jameis Winston, who we're thinking a little less than 20 points against the Panthers, and Joe Flacco scored 20 points at the Rams against the horrible Jaguars defense. Jake Browning, super impressed. I mean, Jake Browning, they said on the broadcast at the very end, his completion percentage last night was an NFL record for anyone making their first or second start of their career. He was 32 of 37 for 354 yards and a touchdown with a rushing touchdown. He just barely was outscored by Trevor Lawrence, but they both scored more than 29 points. So bravo for him. He gets the Colts coming up, who have been better lately, certainly against quarterbacks. So again, that's Minshew, Winston, Flacco, Browning. And then after that, it's DeVito. But really, you might want to take a shot on Nick Mullins because DeVito could lose his job and Mullins could gain a job and gain Justin Jefferson. Dave was talking about that just a little while ago. Trubisky is, there was actually a quote about Mason Rudolph that made me think that if Trubisky comes out and struggles, that they could bench him.
It's possible, but unlikely.
And then CJ Beathard, to give CJ Beathard a little credit, once upon a time in San Francisco, he was not that bad. So
he wasn't that bad last night.
Yeah, he was okay. I think.
I mean, he was no Jake Browning.
I think
probably had a higher ADOT than Jake Browning, but not by much.
They throw short. They play very conservatively. They're not great downfield. I think that was probably the case with Browning, even though he had the deep touchdown catch to Chase, but it wasn't like super deep.
Who do you think had the higher ADOT between Beathard and Browning?
Beathard.
By 3.5 yards.
And yeah, because I remember
7.0 for Beathard, 4.5 for Browning.
4.5 for Browning. I mean, that's just horrible. But Beathard had a terrible deep ball to Zay Jones, I think. It wasn't even close.
And the one to Calvin Ridley was the one who had to make a play on it. That was the play that the holding call brought it back. Right. But it wasn't like a studly throw.
That didn't count in his ADOT, I would assume.
No.
Since play didn't count. All right. Running backs. Damian Pierce and Antonio Gibson. Excuse me. I don't know why I said Gibson. Damian Pierce and Gibson. We didn't mention Chris Rodriguez, but if you're super desperate, he could have a role going forward.
Wait a week. You don't have to go get Chris Rodriguez now.
Well, if you're in a league where a guy like Chris Rodriguez needs to be rostered, then you probably have to get him. But I also don't know about Brian Robinson's injury.
Right.
Ezekiel Elliott, Rashawn Johnson, Tajay Spears, Kenneth Gainwell. Have we talked about them yet? Let's look at the Seattle situation, Jamie. DJ Dallas maybe with an opportunity. I mean, unfortunately, it's San Francisco. But we got 2 injured running backs there, and we just don't know what the situation is for the Seahawks.
I saw 2 reports where, the ever optimistic Pete Carroll said he's hopeful that Kenneth Walker can play in Week 14. So we'll see if that's the case. And then in terms of Zach Charbonnet, the only report we saw was that he's dealing with a knee. So it doesn't sound serious, but still, it's anytime you're talking about a knee, you never know. So hopefully both guys are available, if not one, which would be more ideal because then you're getting all the touches like we've seen. But yes, if both are out, then DJ Dallas is probably looking at 15 total touches. And so desperate flex play in deeper leagues, he's on the table.
What is your interest?
What about Kenny McIntosh? Could he get in there?
I would hope that he would, but we just
running downs at least. DJ Dallas will for sure play passing downs. But I won't. Yeah. I'm not. No. I mean, suddenly I'm more interested in Chris Rodriguez.
Yeah. Well, remember last week you were saying that Pete Carroll said that Kenny McIntosh was going right to the top, and he didn't.
Right to the top, and then I don't think he had a single. I don't know if he played more than one snap.
Right to the top of the bench.
Ever optimistic Pete Carroll.
Any interest?
Lying old coot.
Deontay Foreman, 59%.
No,
that's not a bad one.
It's not a bad one, right? I mean, it's not bad, but I don't have a ton of interest.
I think it's difficult to say we should be adding Rashawn Johnson and adding Deontay Foreman. Like that just feels like bad advice.
Well, I guess you could say you can add Rashawn Johnson, and if you don't get him, then you can add Deontay Foreman.
I mean, look, if you really want to lock up the Bears backfield, which has been fantastic all season long, then go get both.
Lock up the Bears backfield going into a matchup where Justin Fields has reliably run for over 100 yards against the opponent.
That's true. That's true.
Or the last 3 games.
Wide receiver. Romeo Dobbs and Jaden Reed and Noah Brown and Jackson Smith and Jigba. Jamie, who's your favorite from that group?
Of the shallow guys?
Yeah.
It would be Jaden Reed. I think we've just seen enough of his upside to say that he has the best potential if Christian Watson's going to miss any time. But even when Watson's been there, I just bind into Jordan Love right now. Like he's just been excellent and amazing to see his growth and his production. And I saw somebody tweet like God damn it, the Packers going to have a third straight Hall of Fame quarterback.
Must have been a Bears fan.
Probably so. But I mean, look, he's got the goods, and his receivers are growing up and playing well, and it sucks that Watson, just when he's getting going, has the hamstring injury. So hopefully he's able to play through it. But if he's not, then both these guys are worth picking up. But I would lean toward Reed.
I think you can make the argument for all four of these guys being excellent ads. Reed, for the reasons you said. Dobbs, if there is no Watson, we've seen him be the go-to guy for Jordan Love before. Noah Brown, no more Tank Dell, and if there's no Dalton Schultz, you'd think that he's going to start getting more targets. And JSN should have had a monster game on Thursday, I guess it was. It seems like a year ago. But he still had a pretty good game in PPR. And I wonder if he ends up being number 2 in targets the rest of the season ahead of Lockett. So I like all four of these guys. If you can find them in a shallow league, go get them.
Oh, man. People will be a lot more excited about JSN if that touchdown had counted. And a few weeks ago, he had a long catch that he just stepped out of bounds on. He's been very close.
Yeah, he's going to be one of the best and most talked about breakout receivers next year.
I hope so. Beckham, or Elijah Moore, Odell Beckham, Curtis Samuel, Demario Douglas, who I must stress once again was listed as a did not practice on Monday, so he's trying to get out of the concussion protocol. Rashid Shaheed would be pretty interesting. He could take over as the lead wide receiver this week if Olave is. Wait, what am I saying?
Olave's going to play.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah,
don't scare us with an Olave injury now.
I'm back in week 13. Never mind. Rashid Shaheed's on the list though. Jonathan Mingo, Jalen Hyatt. The next
Jameson
two opponents.
Williams, maybe.
Who?
Jameson Williams. Ever hear of him?
No.
Yeah, still doesn't get any targets, but
very few. But he does make some plays. It's a stash guy.
I like the Dontavian Wicks call. He's got 4 to 5 targets in 5 straight games, and that was all with Christian Watson.
Yep.
So if he gets 6 or 7 targets, he might get 60 yards out of them. Jets wide receiver Xavier Gipson had a big game randomly, but he's at the bottom of the list.
Hard pass.
Any interest in Quentin Johnston? Quentin Johnston, anyone?
I considered it, but he dropped so many passes. He had another bad drop again last week against the Patriots. Now, granted, weather was an issue there. They're playing the Broncos, so he's not going to see Patrick Surtain most likely. But if he does, that's a huge issue for him. So it's just so hard to trust. I wish this is the start of a breakout for him, but the targets are there. The production's not. Just tough to say. Go at him.
Tight ends, Isaiah Likely. Well, Dallas Goedert would be actually, did I ask you this? Would you rather have Goddard or Likely?
Goddard will be the number 1 tight end to go get. Yes.
Okay. Goddard would be number 1. Likely 2. Conklin for Jamie. I think Dave likes Everett next.
Yes.
Brevin Jordan is on the list. Tyler Conklin's on the list. Darren Waller. If we knew he were playing, maybe we'd be more interested. Great matchups going forward for Darren Waller. Tucker Kraft for the Packers is okay. Faces the Giants this week. What do you think about Kyle Pitts if these other guys were available? He's 78% rostered.
I'd be dropping Kyle Pitts for a lot of these guys.
Same here.
All right,
and he just had one of his better games of the year.
Yeah. Dave mentioned Chigo Okonkwo at Miami this week. He's a decent option in deeper leagues. DSTs, the Saints are against the Panthers. The Colts are at Cincinnati. The Colts have 20 sacks in their last 4 games, something like that. The Texans
have at least 18 fantasy points in each of their last 4.
Wow. The Texans at the Jets. The Patriots at Pittsburgh. The Packers are at the Giants. Kickers, Blake Grupe, Matt Gay, Jake Moody. Well, thank you, guys. That was a lot of fun.
It's an important week.
Yeah. Jamie's still alive and well, and Scott Fish. So am I. Several CBS are still going. Yeah.
How are you guys in the FFT Open?
FFT closed.
I'm in.
You're in.
First. I did not get the first round bye, but I'm in the triangle match.
Excellent. Zang. Good job. It's Jamie. Did you make the top 4? 4th seed. All right.
I think we got a shot. Let me check points.
All right. Well, right. Gonna check that. Should sort it for you on CBS. Have a great day, everybody. We'll talk to you tomorrow with some fun stuff on our Wednesday episode. All right. Of Fantasy Football Today. See you, everybody.